In this video, I'm going to show you how you can make a fire starter that easily lasts over 15 minutes and will definitely get your fire started. Now, these fire starters are made of three basic materials. You've got your wax, you've got something that holds the wax mixture, so this is like an empty paper or toilet paper roll, and then you've also got either sawdust or planer clippings. I definitely like the planer clippings. I find that they work much better than sawdust, but a sawdust fire starter will also work as well. Now, the first thing you need to do is take one of your empty toilet paper rolls and seal off one of the ends. I like to use painter's tape and just put a couple of pieces of tape across one of the ends and make sure it's nice and tight. Make sure there are no gaps because any melted wax that you pour in there will find a gap and you'll create a huge mess. So try and get it as sealed off as you can, but at the same time, begin melting some wax. My favorite method for melting wax is to double boil it. So you have a very small pot of boiling water, and the wax is inside of a measuring cup that's inside of the boiling water. This does a decent job of melting the wax. It takes a little while to get started, but once it's really getting going, it melts pretty quickly. But don't wait for the entire batch to melt prior to pouring in the wax. Now, what I like to do is get just a little bit of wax melted, pour some wax into the bottom, and let a very thin layer of wax harden on the bottom. And again, that'll help ensure that that hard layer of wax on the bottom will help plug any gaps you have in your tape and just keep a good seal on the bottom. But once you have melted more wax, I like to pour wax in first and then put my planer clippings in second so that the wax can kind of seep up through the planer clippings as I pack them in and fill in any gaps. If you do it in the other order, you may leave some gaps where there's no wax, whereas if you do the wax first, then you're likely to eliminate all those gaps. So you'll do this process a couple times, right? So you'll pour in some melted wax, you'll stuff in some of your either your planer clippings or your sawdust, melt some more wax, pour some more in, and then put some more sawdust in. You'll do this a few times until you run out of wax. And once you run out of wax, just let the fire starters sit and harden and cool down. Give it a day. Wait till tomorrow before you come back to it and let it fully harden on the inside. Once it is hardened, now it's time to cut it into smaller fire starters. And first you just take off the painter's tape, so you don't need that anymore. Again, the bottom should be completely sealed, so nothing should fall out. And I like to use a bandsaw, and I just cut it into little 1 inch chunks of fire starters. So this will yield maybe 7 to 12, depending on how thick you make them, 7 to 12 fire starters for a given stick of paraffin wax. Um, and that's really great. That's a good yield for just that one bar of paraffin wax. Now, unfortunately, these fire starters won't take a flame very well. The bandsaw doesn't leave very much combustible surface area. So what I do is I melt the surface, but I have a don't be stupid warning here. You're literally playing with fire. Please be careful. But what I'm doing here is I melt the surface with the flame, again, because it doesn't take a flame well right now. And once I have a little bit of melted wax, I'll put some of my dry planer clippings on top. The wax will melt, and I will have combustible material that'll easily take a flame next time. Again, just please be safe here, because you're again literally playing with fire. Things can go wrong, but I know what I'm doing here, and I'm capable of being safe with this. I want you to be safe with this. If you don't want to take this sort of risk and you just want a different way of creating a fire starter, what you can do is just take the fire starter, and when you go to use it, just sprinkle a little bit of tinder on top of it, light the tinder, and it'll do the same thing. That tinder will light, it'll melt the wax, and the fire starter will actually start. And then to use them, you just light them and they will get going. It'll start small at first and then it'll eventually get bigger. They can burn for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, just depending on how thick you cut it. But yeah, you put your firewood around it and it will light your fire for sure. So I hope you learned something. My name's Charlie. I'm with Measure Twice Woodworking. Thanks for watching.